a scene looking at Island Park Pavilion from Prospect Hill with Charlie Oak's boat livery on the downside of the road and the Island Park Pavilion on the upside of the road. In the shadows in the foreground is an early roundhouse that stood on the bank of the river right down over from Walnut Street, and the Island Park Pavilion can be seen in the background. Also the round brick gas houses over on Bridge Street. Hayes Bigelow, a West Brattleboro photographer who took many photographs of Brattleboro, also had a boat livery on the island. This particular building stood where the launching site is today, and he rented canoes and rowboats which were stored in the upper story of this building, and he also had two large boats where he carried passengers up and down the river in the summertime. This is a scene of the circus on the island. As many times the circuses came here during this marvelous time from 1911 till 1927, very few pictures exist of circuses on the island. Some of these were Barnum and Bailey, Sells Floto, Hardin and Wallace. These all came by train on the upper level on Vernon Street and were unloaded about 5 o'clock in the morning and were set up during the morning hours on the island, and at noontime a lively parade proceeded up through Main Street, and then they had a performance in the afternoon and another performance in the evening, and by morning all of this had been taken down and had gone on by train to the next stop. This is a nice picture of the Island Park Pavilion showing the grandstand on the back, flags flying on the top, and the bridge that went out in the flood of 1920. This is the inside of the dance hall. They also had wrestling here. They had indoor movies. Farmer Bailey wrestled here many times. Miss America and Miss Universe appeared here. Paul Whiteman and his band came here and played. All the things that were good happened in this charming old building. The ice cream parlor. This building contained a penny arcade, a bowling alley, every kind of entertainment, including indoor and outdoor movies. On pleasant evenings, the movies were shown out on the ballpark on a large screen, and they simply turned the projector around and showed them in the dance hall on rainy nights. And here is evidence of the automobiles on the Island Road, all watching the ball game. Here we have a good crowd watching a ball game and a game in progress. To the extreme right and across the river can be seen the top of the E. Crosby grain elevator, which was later taken down in 1912 and was built on Vernon Street. In 1912, there was about 300 Brattleboro people who participated in a week-long extravaganza called the Brattleboro Pageant. And here this scene is depicting a Norwegian boat. However, it actually is representation of the Swedish families who came to Brattleboro and built Sweetville on West Street. They built two churches. Many of them were employees of St. Organ Company. Here is the New Hampshire, one of Bigelow's boats. And in the background you can see the tall white building, which was the E. Crosby grain elevator. You can also see the round brick gas house to the left. And the large building to the right is the back of the American Building and the American Building Annex. And this is one of the early advertisements of Bigelow's boats. These were the Vermont and the New Hampshire, and each one would carry 30 passengers. And they started out from the island for trips around the island. They went to Vernon, they went to Hinsdale, and they went to Putney. If you wanted to, you could go to Putney in the morning on the morning boat, walk up into the village and get a nice dinner for 50 cents and return on a late afternoon boat. Round trip to Putney was 35 cents, and you could go around the island for 5 cents. They had many winter activities on the ice. One of them was ski joring, which is a horse towing a man on skis. They had sulky racing, they had skating, and they also had these motorcycle races. This is a newspaper clipping from the old defunct Boston Post newspaper. Notice the chain on the front wheel of the machine to the left. There were several ice boats in the wintertime. Here again is one that was made by Charlie Oakes. He is the man again with the mustache in the back. We know that this engine came out of one of his boats because of the two tanks. The upper tank is the gasoline tank. The lower barrel is the water cooling, which would normally be done by river water in the summertime. And a spiked wheel on the back provides the power. This is another machine also owned by Charlie Oakes. This particular photograph was torn, but there was enough left of it that we felt it was worthwhile to reproduce it onto a slide. The man at the extreme right in the beaver hat is H.M. Wood, and he had a sporting goods store on Main Street Hill where part of Sam's Army Navy stands today. When I was a small boy, H.M. Wood lived on Green Hill Parkway, and this machine, all taken apart, was in storage in his garage. And we used to play hide and go seek in that area, and many times we would hide in that garage. And I remember seeing this, and my brothers and I wanted this more than anything in this world. But in those days, we couldn't rub two nickels together and get a dime. Eventually, H.M. Wood moved to Florida, and he swapped this machine for a $7 revolver. This is John Manley. He was the oldest son of John Manley Sr., who built the two brick buildings on High Street and had the first automobile sales agency for Essex and Hudson cars in the state of Vermont. Farmer Bailey came to Brattleboro from up in Plymouth, Vermont. He took up wrestling about 1912 and wrestled until 1925. He went as far west as Montana, as far south as Georgia, and down some into Texas. In over 1,000 fights, he only lost 11. He had originally worked as a boy for Charlie Allen in the florist shop, and he was Brattleboro Strong Boy. We have found a newspaper clipping where he could lift his boss's horse, which weighed 1,200 pounds. However, we have never been able to find a photograph of that event. He eventually gave up the ring in 1925. In 1931, he tried to make a comeback in the old Auditorium Theater with Gus Sonnenberg and was injured very badly, and then he gave it up and went into the florist business up on Canal Street. This is a little better view of the Crosby grain mill on the mouth of the Whetstone Brook. At one time, this company did $1 million a year worth of business, much of it wholesaling in grain. The Victorian station can be seen down the tracks further in the distance. This picture was taken, I believe, the day before the first steel bridge was lost to this ice, which happened March 29th, 1920. The bridge went out during the night, so nobody saw it go. However, a man living on the island by the name of Con Flanagan claimed that he had money in his house and he was going to go and get it. Sheriff Wellman told him he could not go, but he went just the same. Coming back with his bag of money, the bridge went out and he went with it and was never found. This is where the bridge normally went, from this sawhorse over to the Island Park Pavilion. And here is a solid sea of ice from Walnut Street all the way down to where the railroad bridge comes across from Hinsdale. There is no stopping this ice when it moves. And here is a scene after the river had receded with considerable damage to the pavilion. So now it was necessary to build a pile bridge across the river so that the people from Hinsdale could come into work. And here is a steam pile driver driving the piles. They've got it halfway across now, and here it is all completed. However, another freshet came along and took the middle of it right out. You will see some of it on each end here in this picture and also in this one. At this time, they brought down a ferry boat that ran from East Emerson to West Chesterfield. This ferry boat was operated by Jack Allen, who some people have said was a bootlegger. The power to provide the propulsion for this was a motorboat tied on the side. The motorboat was owned by Charlie Oakes. The boy that helped him at that time by running the motorboat is Monty Ebenhausen, and Monty Ebenhausen is alive today and living in North Hinsdale. So now they're getting ready to build the steel bridge that exists there today. And what do you think happened? It collapsed. This happened in the daytime. 21 men were dumped into the river. None of them lost their lives. Nobody was hurt, but they had to start all over again. They brought in a pile driver on a barge, and at this particular time, there was a diver working on the bottom of the river. On the little barge on the side, you will see two men propelling some wheels with handles. They're pumping air down into the helmet of the diver who's working on the bottom of the river. And here is the present steel bridge, half completed. They had to put in another pile bridge in order to have something to work on, and eventually the pile bridge was taken out. In 1927, the big barn containing Walter Maine's circus ad tipped over, and my father brought my two brothers and I down here. I was 10 years old at the time, and we looked into that big barn, and there was many, many beautiful boats, some of them made of mahogany. They were all smashed up and full of mud. More damaged by high water. This building contained a penny arcade, a bowling alley, every kind of entertainment, including indoor and outdoor movies. Miss America and Miss Universe appeared here. Paul Whiteman and his band came here and played. All the things that were good happened in this charming old building.